Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Awaken Your Inner Awesomeness. I am your host, Melissa Oatman from melissaoatman.com. I am super excited for today's episode because we have with us Miss Corbie Mitleid. She is a psychic medium. She's also a certified tarot master, a past life specialist, and she has a new book out, The Psychic Yellow Brick Road: How to Find the Real Wizards and Avoid the Flying Monkeys, which I absolutely love that title. So I cannot wait to get started and talk to her today. This episode is sponsored by searchhustle.com, your resource for digital marketing training, taught by digital marketers at the bleeding edge, business owners, and fresh marketing grads. Free for a limited time at searchhustle.com/beta group. Thank you so much, Corbie, for being here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for asking.
So, first of all, I love the title of your book, and I love everything that you do because I also do past life regression with people, and I also do readings for people. So I can't wait to really get to know you and how you operate. But what I always love to do is start by asking our guests to tell us a little bit about themselves and how you got here doing what it is that you do now.
All right, that's called the 30-second elevator speech. When I was 9, I read a book called The Witch Family by Eleanor Estes, and I thought, wow, there's magic in the world. I want to go find it. Fast forward to 1973 when I was a senior in high school, and yes, that tells you how old I am. I was working part-time at Spencer Gifts. They had the James Bond 007 tarot deck, and I bought it because we were all hippies then. Everybody needed a deck. 5 years later, everybody had moved on to roller skates and disco balls. I was still reading because it fascinated me and I loved the stories that tarot would tell. So I read for 20 years, making sure I kept my ego out of the way and I was a clear tube, as John Holland says, for the information. All of a sudden in 1994, I could do hands-on healing and talk to dead people with no training. That's when the universe handed me my draft notice and said, hello, you're working for us. So I did it part-time, lots of other careers during the day: actress, author, inspirational speaker, video producer, legal assistant, writer for a graphic novel series called ElfQuest, executive recruiter, you name it. But I always did this psychic work on the side. 9/11, when my husband and I watched the towers burn, I said, I need to do this work full time. People need to know there are other answers out there. And he said, I believe in you, go do it. So for a year, I still worked corporate 70 hours a week, psychic work evenings and weekends to make sure I could make a living at it. 1 year later, shut the door forever in corporate. This is now my full-time job. I work 6 days a week, 14 hours a day. I read about 1,000 people a year, and I get to get up every morning. I don't have to get up every morning. Huge difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. That makes a really big difference when you're living your passion and you're doing what you love. And also that you feel like you have a purpose because what you're doing serves others. And I think that that's where a lot of people miss the mark, is when trying to find their purpose. Many people go for money or different things like that, and that doesn't really ever bring happiness.
Mm-mm. I always tell people they need to find their sentence of passion, and that's not who you are or what you do or even how you do it. It's the vapor trail you leave behind in every encounter. My sentence of passion is cross the bridge from fear to fearlessness and fly. When I can take you from point A to point B when you thought you couldn't make it, whack you on the shoulder and say, here are your wings, you don't need a flight plan, now get, I'm living my bliss. And that is what people come to both of us for.
Yes, absolutely. And so you started with tarot reading, which I love tarot reading too. I do readings, but I do more like the oracle cards, but I love tarot so
You mean
much.
like these?
Yeah, like all those.
Oh, I teach a course called Decadance, which teaches people how to read any oracle deck they pick up within 30 seconds. And I show them that I will use 2 or 3 different decks in a reading. First tarot, then my karma and relationship deck, and maybe I'll finish with my Ganesh deck. Boom, boom, boom. Gives real depth to the reading, and people love oracle cards
Yes.
because they speak easily to somebody new at this.
They do. And I love tarot too, because as you said, it does tell a story. And I remember one
Hmm.
time the first time I went to get a tarot reading, and I
Hmm.
thought, I can't believe I'm doing this. But I went and I got a reading, and it was almost like having a counseling session. I
Yes.
got so much information, like more information and more help. And she even gave me the name of a book that she said, you need to read this book, and it's all about self love. And it was the best thing ever. And that's immediately
Hmm.
when I knew I have to be doing this more often.
Yes. We're not fortune tellers. Fortune tellers would flip three cards and go wait until January and fire the second redhead if you're asking about your career. Me, you say, I want to open up a crystal shop. I say, great. Card for you, a card for the energy around the business, the brick and mortar location, how you market it, clients, competition, staff, finances, what you need to know, and best possible outcome. That puts a rocket pack on my client's back. It is empowering. It's not, you've got a curse on you, so you have to buy the $600 candle.
Right.
Ugh. Mm.
Or the magic spells anyway, like that drives me up a wall too. Like, get your past lover back by doing this candle trick or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, you're messing with someone's free will. Like, don't do that.
Or
Just
turn
don't do
it
that.
around. Fine. You
Yeah.
got rid of this guy and you're so grateful. Do you want him to go to Madame Hoo-ha and say, I need to hook her back in? Of
Right.
course you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Flip the question, darling.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. That's a very good point. I love that you did the tarot, but then what's interesting to me is that you also then started being able to communicate and see people who had crossed over. And now, what year
Mhm.
did that happen to you? I forgot what
That
year.
happened in 1994.
1994. Okay. And was it just like a random person that you saw, or was it that you saw one of your own loved ones?
Um, well, it was, I guess, random. This has to do with a past life. And the way you said you do past life regression, it's really important that your listeners understand the difference between what you do and what I do. They're both valid, but different. See, I do past life retrieval. If you come to me and say, why am I always weirded out with wet hair in my face? I'm the one who goes into a fast trance, goes up to the Akashic, pulls down the book and says, read chapter 2. This is for people who either cannot be hypnotized or they're too scared of it, or they just don't want to go and feel these things again. What you do with regression, people are going up there. And what I want to warn people about is they need someone trained like you, because if they revisit a particularly grisly death or a violent thing that is traumatic, you know how to pull them out, pull them back, make it more objective to them. Someone who just wants to try this because they think it's cool, they could do massive amounts of damage. So no, you go to somebody who knows what they're doing, like Miss Melissa, please.
Well, I really like how you do past life retrieval, because I know there are a lot of people who are very, very scared of
Mm-hmm.
tapping into that tap life, the past life,
Yes,
and they don't really necessarily want to experience it. They just want to find the answers and the patterns that
right,
they keep bringing over from lifetime to lifetime.
right. One of my favorite quick stories is a woman came to me at a psychic fair and said, I'm really worried about my son. He's in his late 20s. He refuses to live more than a mile from me. He always asks me about any decision he makes. What's going on here? Went upstairs and said, okay, Utah Beach. So this is D-Day. Your kid is a soldier. He's got a pretty badly mangled leg. You're his commanding officer. You're dragging him over a dune. You got some shrapnel too, but you both made it out alive. And she looks at me and she says, can you see what my rank was? I said, yeah, you were a sergeant. She sits back in her chair and says, he has called me Sarge since 3 years old and we've never known why. Boom.
That's
So you've got
incredible.
something that really shows what's going on.
Yeah.
And my whole idea is spirit looks inside us when they're telling us what we're going to be good at. It's like rifling through a file cabinet. What are our talents? I was a theater major at Brown University, so I know characters. I'm a writer. I know how to tell a story. And I'm a history freak. So if I see something, I'm not going to say it's a long skirt, it's a big hat in front of a fancy building. I'm going to be able to say, hobble skirt, picture hat, that kind of ostrich feather in front of the Brandenburg Gate We're talking Berlin in 1911. Now, which one's going to give their client more information?
Right.
But don't ask me to use a pendulum. I have a slight benign tremor in one hand. I can't trust it.
Yeah.
So I turn pendulum and psychometry work over to somebody else.
Yeah, that's really interesting, an interesting point. And I can totally see where, you know, your gifts are really displayed because of the background that you've had.
Mhm.
And that's so true. Every psychic medium, people I think tend to think that everyone is just alike. And that
Mm-mm.
cannot be farther from the truth because everyone is so different. Everyone has different modalities they work with. Everyone shows up differently, even, I think, with their
Mhm.
clients.
You would not ask a cardiologist who is a heart specialist, I have this rash on my butt. That's the dermatologist question, not the cardiologist. And you would know that. So we too have our different specialties. Go find the person that you want. We're all okay with that. I don't know one professional intuitive who would say, well, it's not in my wheelhouse, but don't go to anybody else about it. We're
Yeah,
going to show you the good folks.
right. Exactly. Because our compassion for people and wanting to help them is so much stronger, I think, than anything else. And
Mhm.
I'm amazed that, yeah, I mean,
We're here in service,
exactly,
period.
exactly. And I'm just astounded at your work hours and ethic that you read over 1,000 people a year.
When you divide it by 365 days, it's not that bad. It really isn't. But yes, because I love
Wow.
what I do.
And that is very apparent. So take us through sort of how you do your readings with people, because I'm very interested. Because as we said, all mediums are different.
Mhm. Okay. Um, it depends on what you want. I tell people, look, people come to me for four things. The everyday tour bus, house, car, job, kids. Okay, God, you put me here. Now what? Who was I in 1642 Belgium? I want to speak to my spirit guide, Binky, or how's dead Aunt Mabel? I mean, it's going to be one of those four things. And when I say that, they laugh. And that's good because when you laugh, your shielding comes down and the information gets in a little better. So I will say to you when you sit with me, what's the most important thing you want to get out of here knowing? And if you go blank on me, I'll go Brooklyn on you and say, darling, what's biting your butt? Because when you say it that way, everybody comes up with at least one. So if it is the everyday tour bus, that's tarot, that's my oracle cards. If it is past lives, spirit guides, angels, that's all channeling. When someone wants to speak to one of their dead people, I do not just go fishing. That's not my talent. The best medium I ever knew who could do that is the late, great Allie Cheslett from Albany, New York. We nicknamed her Chatty Cathy of the Dead because you would sit down and want your dead Aunt Mabel, you pulled the string and Allie would just go. No, didn't take a breath. But what I do is I use what I call the dog tags. For instance, my father, Jerome Richard Dorkin, who died in 2001 at the age of 80, doesn't tell me anything about him, but it gets me right into the energy. And then I will start telling you what I get. And oddly enough, my guides tend to let me play charades. If I put my hands to my lips, it's smoking. If I put my hands on my chest and move them out, it was surgery. If the heel of my hand taps my forehead, it was a fast death or unexpected. Once we're sure we've got the person, I let them speak directly through me. It may not sound like them, but I don't censor, which is why I will never do it in public. Because what comes out of my mouth has been very private, very healing, but you don't want that kind of thing to come out to an audience.
Right. Right.
Couple of examples of what I get that are absolutes. A woman wanted to speak to her father-in-law. I felt myself miming a pool cue. She said, yes, he taught me how to play pool. A girl in Canada wanted to speak to her grandfather, and I feel myself salute. Now, for those who aren't viewing it, Americans salute with their palms down. Brits and Canadians salute with a palm out. My palm was out. The grandfather was saying that he acknowledged with pride her graduating from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Academy the week before.
Wow.
Now, see, those are precise. That's not it's a rose, they love you.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that I demand from my dead people so that my clients are not fooled.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than getting vagaries and wondering, was that really the person I wanted?
Yeah, exactly. And I've had many different kinds of readings too myself, and some where it was really vague and you had to, like, you're doing guesswork, and others where it was very specific and you knew exactly who you were talking to at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know a lot of people are looking for that because a lot of people need closure, I think, in
Hmm.
situations. And so I totally understand why information that comes out would be very private and personal, because I think a lot of spirits sometimes come through to apologize for different things that have happened, trying to get that off their, clear the air,
They
I guess, if you
do,
will.
or it's just not appropriate. The funniest story about that, there was a biracial same gender couple. The black partner had died. Her white widow wanted to speak to her. Now, I grew up a nice Jewish kid in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I have manners. Once I got her dead partner, what came out of my mouth was flawless urban ebonics and language you don't use in public. But I let it out and I was beet red in the face. But my client was laughing and nodding and crying because that sentence was exactly what her partner Isabel walked in the house saying after every business trip. If I had said that in public, oh, there would have been riots.
Yeah.
So no.
Yeah. That's great. And I want to talk about your book too, because now
Mhm.
your book, the book, The Yellow Brick Road, that is, does that talk to people about how they can tap into their own abilities too, or just how to find
No,
the
I mean, I've got
professional?
a chapter at the end, but there are 6,942 books about how to develop psychic work. There is nothing out there that I found that tells you how to stay safe when you're looking for an intuitive counselor, how to avoid the nutcases that didn't also say, and I'm so good, you should only come to me. I don't care if you never come to me, my darlings. If
Yeah.
this book helps you find somebody who's good and is reliable, all boats rise. I did my job. So, no, this book, it starts out with two chapters that I have lectured on. The first one is Psychics 101, The Good, the Bad, and the Cleos, and Psychics 102, How to Have a Great Psychic Experience. But then we go into things like what you don't ask, when you really don't need a reading, pay fair to play fair, et cetera, et cetera. Um, the chapter that other psychics love and laugh over is the one about when you shouldn't get a reading. Because look, 95% of the people who come to us, it's usually about love.
Yeah.
And sometimes you will get a client that is determined you are going to tell them exactly what they want to hear. So they keep hammering at you like a woodpecker.
Yeah.
Does Bruce love me? No. Well, is he gonna love me? Not the way you want. Well, if I do this, is he gonna love me? No, he's not. Well, is he gonna call soon? No, he's not. Is he gonna call later then? And boom, 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 until finally some psychics just go, yes, fine. He loves you and he wants 7 babies with you, but he just doesn't know it yet. Oh, good. I thought so. Oh, please. Don't do that to us.
That is so true, though. That is very true.
You're a professional psychic after you've gotten that one in your desk, because all of us do.
Yes. Yes. That, or sometimes too, I laugh because I will have people who come to me and say, I'm 99% sure of what I should do, but I
Mhm.
wanted to come to you to make sure.
Yes. Or, we tell them and they say, well, that's what I thought I was supposed to do. But I say, that's called a verification reading. It
Yeah.
happens a lot. And those are your guides and your angels whacking you upside the head and saying, dummy, what'd you spend the money for?
Right.
Because it is. You
Yeah.
guys, look, every single one of you listening can do what Michelle does, can do what I do. We're not special. We're all wired the same way. The way I explain it, we all have 10 fingers. Everybody can play chopsticks. Some of us really get into the idea of playing, so we learn scales and how to read music and we practice. 1 in 10 million is Elton John,
Yeah.
but we all have 10 fingers.
Right.
So do it. You want to be a psychic? Kids, there are 8 billion people in the world, and Melissa and I can't read them all. So
Right.
we need you.
We need some help.
Yes.
I love that. So I love that you wrote a book trying to help steer people away from, because there are so many people out there who take
Mhm.
advantage, sadly, of people who are
Yes.
hurting and in pain and just trying to get answers. about loved ones. And I think you find people who truly are in it for the passion and because they love serving people. And I know that's why I'm in it, and I know that's why you're in it too. So I think it's amazing that there's a guide because, as you said, you don't really ever see a book like that. Like, here's how to stay away from somebody who's gonna rip you off. But there
Mm-hmm.
are like those telltale signs of, well, pay me money and I'll use this spell, or pay me money and I'll.
This is that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah.
I was doing a psychic fair in Canada, 250 booths. So you're going to have some charlatans there. And
Yeah.
across the way was a fake gypsy. And we watched a woman walk down the aisle, and the fake gypsy runs out of her booth, grabs the woman and says, "Oh, you don't need to pay 30, 40, $50. I need your bum for 10. Come." Drags the woman behind her little screen. 20 minutes later, we see the woman leave the booth crying hysterically. And a bunch of us run over to see what happened. Well, of course, the gypsy had said, "Oh, you have a family curse. How many in your family? 4? You have dog? $50 every family member, 25 for a dog. He's small. We fix." And told the woman if she didn't burn 400 specially blessed candles at the Roman Catholic Church, "I bless real good, only $1 candle." Her entire family was going to die in a car accident in 2 weeks, and she bought it.
Oh,
That is why I wrote this book.
yeah.
Prevent that sort of thing from happening.
That's so horrible. I
It
can't
was.
even imagine doing that to somebody. That's just a horrific thing, um, on so many different levels. But oh my gosh, yeah. And that's the sad thing. There definitely are people out there. I remember, this is a funny story. When my sister was in high school, they had the psychic hotline that you could call.
Miss Cleo, of
Uh-huh.
course.
And so my sister called it, and she told me that she did it, but she did not tell my mom, that she was calling the psychic hotline. And she said, "Oh, yeah, they said you have problems with your dad, you have daddy issues." And, we had a family that had divorced. So, of course, that was pretty common anyway, that you
Yeah.
would say that. But my mom gets the phone bill, and I was walking down the street and I could hear my mom screaming from down the street. And my sister said, "Oh, but they were so good, and they were really accurate." And my mom said, "Did she tell you you were going to have a large phone bill in your future?" And we all
Yeah.
just died laughing. We're like,
Yeah. That's what they got them for. Now, are there some phone lines that still work? Of course. I work one. It's called Best Psychics Directory. It's got very good people. And if all you need me to do is answer a 4-minute question, get on that line, because the minimum you can get from me is 15 minutes. So, and I'm fast. And people really appreciate that. And I'll be very honest. Once they've had that little reading on Best Psychics, they go looking for me. They find the website, and it's the equivalent of in the grocery store when you have a little taste of the meatball,
yeah.
But I can still be accurate, especially if it's, "Does Bruce love me?" Those questions are 3 minutes long. Um, there are all kinds of ways to get to work with a psychic. Psychic fairs are one, but people need to understand when you walk in and you don't know any of us from Adam's house cat what to do. So I basically tell people they have to be like good puppies. The first thing they do is they're walkies, and they go in and they walk around and they just look at everybody and see what the feel is. Then they need to get paper trained. You go, and if anybody looks interesting, you pick up a rack card or a flyer, and then you take it back and you read it. Now, 3 or 4 of us are probably going to look pretty interesting. So you go back and talk to us if we're not busy. If we are, you talk to our front people. But remember, we can tell you we're wonderful, and that doesn't count. And we hire our front people to say they love us. My first front person was the fabulous Laura, who was my husband's office manager Monday through Friday. Do you think she's going to dismiss his museum director? Probably not. You want to find our testimonial books on the table. Those are written by people we've read. Are we good? Are we kind? Are we funny? Do we have specialties? Are we accurate? Would they come back? But the last and most important part of this is check in at your heart chakra, my kids. If the psychic doesn't feel like she has a brain in her head, really cares about what she's doing, or is going to give you good information, Don't go there, no matter how cool the wiki woo looks on the table. She's not your reader.
Yes, that is very good advice. Very, very good. And then another thing I will say, one of the things that I always look for to, you can't avoid sometimes getting information that's maybe not so positive.
Mhm.
But I always look for people, because there's a difference between getting information that's not positive and someone who's super negative.
Mhm.
And I have
Yes.
seen readers before who are like just gloom and doom all the time. And I really feel like it's their energy coming across, because I
Mhm.
feel like you can give someone information that maybe isn't going to make them so happy in a way that's constructive and helpful and help them make the most sense of it, and what's the next best step that you can take that's going to make this as good as possible for you, make this go as smoothly as possible for you. And that's what I
Yes.
always look for.
You know, a lot of people will say, "Don't tell me anything bad." And I go, "Doesn't happen here." But I've beat cancer 3 times, 2 divorces, and now I have a 21-year relationship and great husband. So it's, here are your opportunities and how to grab them. Here's the tough stuff. Here's how to get through it or around it. Here's your toolbox. Go rock and roll. Now, if someone says, "Please don't talk to me about health," I am a hypochondriac. I will respect that, and I won't say anything about health at all, because they have set the boundaries, and a good intuitive will respect your boundaries. That's why I can't stand what I call drive-by psychic shootings. That's like the Long Island medium walking up to you in the grocery store and saying, "Excuse me, your Aunt Doris says you have a bald back tie. You're going to die in a car accident if you don't get it fixed. Just telling you," and walks away. She has done such a disservice, because amateurs think
Yeah.
they get a hit. They can walk up to anybody and they have to give the information.
Yeah.
No, that is saying my ego and my wanting to show off trumps your free will.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, no true intuitive would do that. Even the psychics at Lilydale would say, "I'm Reverend Shirley and I'm from Lilydale. I believe I have a message for you. May I come to you?" Those are the 5 magic words. And if you say no, they will back off. If someone doesn't back off, you call the manager. You're being harassed.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
I was actually going to ask you what you thought about like those television shows with the psychics, but that's exactly, I say that all of the time. I tell people,
Yeah.
you know, for me, I've learned to shut it off,
Mhm.
not tap into things when I don't want to
Oh,
be.
open and close sign.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Because I said you don't want to be walking around everywhere seeing dead people or getting messages, or that would be miserable. So,
Mhm.
you know, like you said,
Absolutely
and
right.
you would annoy everyone else around you too.
And people need to know we do respect their boundaries. You know, about the reality show, I actually lost a reality show because I wouldn't lie. What everybody will always hear me say is, "I'm not special. You can do what I do." I absolutely believe it. And they were saying, "No, no, no, we have to position you so you're so amazing. Everyone has to come to you." I said, "But that makes my life alive." They said, "We'll see you. We'll go get somebody else." And I have no regrets, because that would have prostituted my abilities. And I'm willing to bet you that they would be disappeared within a year, because that's not the deal I have with my guides.
Yeah,
I'm here in service, not to get the big bucks.
I love that. I love when people have integrity in that way, because there's so many people right now who don't, unfortunately. So the fact that you wrote this book, even to help the average person who just wants to go and get help from a psychic, but who's never really either had experience or maybe has gone to a bad psychic before. I love that you're doing that, because there is a need for people to be able to understand what to look for and how to go
Mm-hmm.
about, because it's like a doctor. When you go to choose
Mm-hmm.
a doctor, we oftentimes blindly go to someone thinking, well, they're a doctor, they have to be good, they have to be professional. And then you find out they
Mm-hmm.
were the worst doctor. They ignored everything you
Yes.
said to them and missed the
Yes.
diagnosis. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
same thing.
Yes. That's why you try to get testimonials, or we all have them on our websites. And I always encourage people, If you want to work with Swami Swalananda, ask him for 3 or 4 referrals. If we're pros, we have a handful of people that had said, of course, send them to me. I'll be happy to tell them how you read.
Yeah.
Because that way you make sure that you don't have a one-trick pony. When I first started reading publicly in about 2 or 3, I mean, I just married my husband. We still couldn't pass each other in the house without smooching. I mean, we're so cute. And I was doing a show that was run by, I'll call her Madam, crotchety, because she's no longer around. She said, oh, well, welcome to the circuit. Let me show you how we read. She flipped a few cards and she said, I'm so sorry, but your husband is sleeping with your best friend on a daily basis and siphoning money out of your bank account. Now, at that point, I was in upstate New York. My best friend lived in Thousand Oaks, California. Daily basis? Don't think so.
Yeah.
And I had an account that was separate from my husband's. But then Madam Crotchety said, that's all right, I'll tell you how to handle it, and proceeded to tell me how she took her last 4 husbands to the cleaners. Muddy channels give muddy information, kids. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't want the one-trick pony, but that also means you don't want glurpy purple with angels. Hi, let's see what your angels are going to say today. I know they love you and they will give you good news. Oh, please. Where's the wastebasket? No.
Yeah. I love the little names you're coming up with for
Look, I have
you
done
can picture it.
stand-up comedy. I've done stand-up comedy on what it's like to be a psychic. So yes. And when you tell people stories like this, they will remember. As a reader, how many times do we have to tell our clients that they really need to learn to draw their boundaries, to say no when they mean it, and they all nod, and it's like an omega brain just does not go in. Well, that's why I made up postcards that say no is a fabulous idea, and I hand it to them. And on the back is the tale of Sid, Moses' second cousin, which explains to them why they need to say no. And they laugh, but they put this on their refrigerator and they remember.
That's a fabulous idea. I love that.
Oh yeah, people like tchotchkes, things.
Yeah.
So I get that.
And anything you can put in front of you to remind you that this is what I'm supposed to be working on today is always
exactly.
a good thing. Yeah.
Exactly the point.
I love that. And I love this conversation. If anyone wants to get your book, or if they want to get a reading with you or just follow you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, they can't avoid me, Melissa. They really can't. First, you go to my website, CorbieMitleid.com. That's how to make an appointment with me. There's over 150 articles. There are the links to get my books. My books are on Amazon. I've got 3. Clean Out Your Life Closet is my first book. That's self-help. The Psychic Yellow Brick Road. And if you're serious about wanting to join Melissa and me on the circuit, the newest book is You've Got the Magic, Who Needs a Genie? And it's everything I learned about being on the road doing psychic work for 18 years. Paperback, Kindle, and the first book is audiobook. Where else? Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. And if you want to work with me on a regular basis, go to my Patreon page, because there are all kinds of tiers where we do monthly get-togethers and I teach classes only for my Patreon peeps. And so it's the real deep dish way to work with me.
I love that. So I'm going to have that link in the show notes so you can click and go directly there. So it's just
thank you,
easy for you. I always like to, before we leave, ask our guests to leave our listeners with a little nugget of wisdom. I know you've given us a lot and a lot of laughter throughout this conversation, so I thank you for that. But if you could leave them with something today, what would that be?
That would be live life like a Martian detective. Now, what's that? If Melissa had water coming out of her eyes and I looked at her, I might say, why are you crying? But a Martian who comes down and is fascinated by Earth wouldn't do that. He'd just look at Melissa and say, why is there water coming from your eyes? And the Martian might be right. Could be allergies, could be her contact lenses, could be emotion. When you step away from judgment and you just ask the next question, that opens up every single possibility.
I love that. I love that. Very interesting and something to think about. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. This was such a great and fun conversation.
I had a great time. Thank you, and thank your audience.
And I want to thank you guys for being here with us today, too. As always, if you like this podcast, please subscribe. Please leave a positive review from wherever you're listening. And the greatest compliment you can pay me is to share this podcast with anyone else you think might also enjoy it. Don't forget, you can follow me on social media. And if you want to work with me, just go to melissaoatman.com. You can also join me on Patreon. I would love to see you over there. As always, I hope you have a beautiful day today from wherever you're listening. I'm sending you so much love and light, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.